Hey guys, what's going on? Warshank here, and in this video I'm going to be covering the most popular decks currently being played in Hearthstone. So what I mean by this is when you queue into the ranked ladder and you get faced up with a hunter, a druid, a warrior, what deck are they playing, and you can basically figure out 25 plus cards in your opponent's deck just off what they're playing and the decks that I'm going to show you here, because they overall don't change that much. Meta's at a point where most decks have been solidified, and there's just maybe a couple cards that switch in and out of those decks. And besides that, you're going to be playing against almost the same exact deck if you go against some of these people. So with that, also take note that I just went over. I didn't want to release this video without looking at the balance changes. That video is also going to be out. I did my write-up and review on that. But since the balance changes hit, obviously, let's look into one of our decks here. It'll have Giggling Inventor in it. Maybe this deck has Giggling Inventor in it. It doesn't have Giggling Inventor in it. But decks that have the Giggling Inventor or Mana Worm, just assume that those two cards will change out with something else, like a Scale Banner or something. Don't get bogged down because 2 cards in a 30-card deck are getting nerfed. I don't think the meta is going to change at all. I will stand by what I say if the meta completely shifts, but in my opinion, it will change at 0%. There won't be a single deck that ran Giggling Inventor with its nerf will no longer be a good deck. I just don't see it happening at all. So the first deck we're going to cover is the OTK Priest. This is my rendition of the deck. There's 2 current versions. There's ones that run the Obsidian Statue, Lich King, and more of an anti-aggro, a lot of burst with Holy Smites and Holy Novas, Spirit Lash, Holy Fires, and Mind Blast. So this is like the more minion, I don't even say minion heavy, but more like back end heavy, because there's another version that runs the Prophet Velen and Malygos, and then, Blood Mage, and Radiant Elemental. So there's 2 versions of basically the same deck, and they do exactly the same thing, and that's basically kill your opponent with having multiple Malygoses out, multiple Velens out, and then you go ahead and you use Holy Smite or Mind Blast, and they can do upwards of, like, I've gotten Mind Blast to 120 damage. So it just basically depends on how many Malygoses and Velens you can get with your lesser spell stones and your Eternal Servitude. I like this build a little bit better just because I like, resurrecting giant monstrosities of minions, because if you run the other version and you go like Eternal, or you go Spellstone, you have a good chance to get, like, blood, the Radiant Elementals, Blood Mages, Zill, and you don't get, like, Lich King, Malygos, Statue, and Velen. I mean, it just feels good when you go Spellstone, you get 4 giant minions. So it's just preference, but the deck overall it's not that big of a change in comparison to the other Priest deck. But this is basically the only Priest deck I've seen run around right now at all. I haven't seen any other Priest deck I've played against. I think I've played maybe against 2% of Priests, and they all play some form of OTK Priest. So moving on to Hunter, we have the Deathrattle Hunter. This is probably going to be one of the most popular decks on ladder right now. It's a really, really powerful deck, and we'll kind of go over why. It also runs Prince, so not only does it have the factor of like a Deathrattle Hunter burst with, of course, Carnivorous Cube, but it also has the ability to buff all of the minions in the deck +1/+1 if you get to draw this early. If you're a good player, you normally draw Prince on 1 or 2, and then it just buffs everything, and it's just crazy because most of this entire deck is minions. I mean, there is not a lot of spells in this deck, so giving all these guys +1/+1, absolutely insane. So the point of this deck is to be able to play Devil's Soar Egg in the early stages of the game, and then combo cards like Terrascale Stalker, which trigger Deathrattle minions and or play dead. And if you don't get the egg, don't you worry, you have Carnivorous Cube in this deck, which you can cube cards like Witchwood Grizzly, Savannah Highmane, King Crush, and things of that nature, and then you play dead and or Terrascale Stalker on the Carnivorous Cube and make 2 copies of it. So that's like your mid to late game. And in your really late game is your Death Star Rexar and your Cathena Winter Wisp, but to pull out King Crush. And you can even cube King Crush and then play dead King Crush if he lives a turn, and be able to do a stupid amount of damage that way. So this deck has just a lot of versatility, a lot of ways to play it. Overall, it performs well against almost everything on ladder. Like, I haven't played this particular rendition. I played more of like a bomber version. I put Flark in the deck, guys, and I had a lot of fun. I didn't play Prince because that card's cheap as shit. Yeah, I played a Flark Bomber Hunter, and the deck was just like, if I play against control, I'm happy. If I play against aggressive decks, I'm really not that, upset either. So this particular deck just does well against almost everything, and that's why it's so popular. So when you queue up, you're just like, whatever the opponent is, I have a fair shot at beating them. The next Hunter deck we're going to talk about is the Subject 9 Hunter. So this is basically, from looking at the list, it's a mid-range Hunter with the secret package built in. You're like, hey Rob, where's Subject 9 in this deck? You don't have it in here. I apologize. I just don't have the card crafted. In my opinion, I never liked Subject 9. I hated the card ever since it came out. It's turned out to be pretty good. And what stinks is because it was funny, Trump, I had played him on ladder one time, kind of off the bat story. I played him on ladder one time. I tweeted him. He tweeted me back. We had a little conversation about Subject 9 because he saw that I said it was really bad in one of my videos. And he's like, Subject 9 has a really positive win rate. And, you know, you should, you know, it's not as bad as you think. And I'm like, hopefully it's just a fad. You know, Subject 9 is going away soon. People are just testing it out. And then soon they'll learn it's bad. And then Subject 9's still here today. And people still play the deck. And the card still has a favorable win rate. So I actually have to swallow my words on that one. The card is not bad. I just don't like the card, but the card is not bad. So Subject 9 Hunter is the thing. And you're like, hey Rob, well, what do I play Subject 9 with? What do I take out in this deck? I mean, you could literally take out like a Bear Shark. I mean, it really doesn't matter. You can take out Mossy Horror if you're not playing a lot of Druids. This is just the way I'd build the deck because I wouldn't put Subject 9, but I know it's really good in this deck. So I'll eat my own words on that one. I don't have a problem. If I say something and it's wrong, it turns out to be wrong, it's wrong. I mean, I don't mind being wrong. I'm not gonna be right 100% of the time. I'm human just like everybody else, but I still don't like them. So the next deck we're gonna cover is gonna be the Secret Hunter. This runs no minions in it whatsoever. So we had like the Deathrattle Hunter, which was mostly minions. We had the Subject 9 Hunter, which was half minions, you know, a mid-range hunter with some secrets, the secret package with the spell stones, and then, you know, mid-range minions. And now we have a hunter deck with no minions and just all the secret package, all the spells, and of course, Rockdalar to my side and Rexar as well. So if you have a quick notice, Death Star Rexar is in every single Hunter deck. So if you're interested in playing Hunter, this is just one of those core cards that allow you to compete with other control decks. I personally hate this card. I don't like randomly generating minions every turn and then having to play around cards that were never intentionally in the person's deck, but that's just me. But really, really powerful decks. All of these Hunter decks are really good. The best one's probably obviously Deathrattle Hunter, as that is the most popular one on ladder, and that's what most people are getting, you know, they're really, really high ranks with. But this one, you know, No Spell Hunter has always been a really fun deck, and the reason it's fun is because it has no minions in it, so you have to find creative ways to kill your opponent, which I think is always pretty fun. The next deck we're going to talk about is Druid. This is going to be the token Druid deck. Again, we see Giggling Inventor in this deck. You know, when, you know, the nerfs hit and Giggling Inventor leaves, you know, this will be replaced with just other maybe taunt minions. Maybe Strong Cell Scavenger leaves because there's, you know, 4 less taunt minions in the deck. Who knows? Token Druid, I don't think is going to go anywhere because it loses, again, just Giggling Inventor. Maybe we'll see slightly less Token Druid. But the main point in this particular deck and what makes Token Druid so powerful is Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest. I mean, that combination of card, most decks, unless your priest are, yeah, just if your priest are basically maybe a warrior or warlock, you just can't deal with it. And then from there, you just Savage or Branching Pass and win the game. You know what I mean? You just have so many favorable matchups with Token Druid because if they don't have the AoE needed, there's no way they have any way to clear Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, and then you just swing face with a stupid amount of damage. You also maybe will see the Strong Cell Scavenger and the Giggling Inventor taken out and replaced with more like Treant cards, Treant cards, and then like, you know, that the 10 mana card that says whenever a Treant dies, get Rush, or maybe they'll replace it like Living Mana. Who knows? I don't think it's going to be a big deal. But Giggling Inventor, remember, the beginning of November, it will be taken out. So, Togg / the Malygos Druid. Right now, there's a mix of players playing either just the Togg version, just the Malygos version. In my opinion, the difference in between these two decks is literally 3 cards. If you just play the Togg version, you take out Malygos and Moonfire, and you add in literally like 3 draw mechanics or something like that. So I would rather have 2 win conditions. I add in 3 cards, and now all of a sudden I have 2 win conditions in the deck. So we know that this deck is really popular right now on ladder. Druid and Hunter are probably the most popular 2 classes to hit ladder right now, especially, you know, the Togg / Malygos, and then the Deathrattle Hunter. These are basically what's going on ladder. Like 50+% of the games I've been playing. I mean, it is absurd the amount of Druid and Hunter I've been playing. But this deck, it just has the ability to live throughout the entire early game with ramping, cheap spells, draw mechanic, gain armor. From there, they're able to ramp and or clear more boards. You're like, Rob, why is there 2 Starfalls in the deck? Well, the reason being is most people just play 1 Starfall and it's really, really good. So if I'm playing against somebody and they see me use Starfall because they play around it because they only play around 1, you better believe I'm gonna put 2 in the deck because they're never going to expect 2. So you know me, I just like to, whatever my opponent's thinking, I like to just do whatever else they don't think is going to happen. And he's like, oh man, he runs 2 Starfalls. That's crazy. Most people only run 1, so you got to run 2. It's the only answer. Got to play 2 of them. So yeah, I'm sure you guys have seen enough Togg, Maly, Maly goes through. I don't need to cover and tell you how broken that deck is. Looking at Quest Rogue, this is actually the only deck in ever existence of Hearthstone that there's been a card that's been nerfed twice and it still sees not only competitive play but is considered a tier 1 deck. The Caverns Below has been nerfed twice now and it still sees play. I mean, that should tell you how good this deck was when it was originally released, when you only had to bounce a minion 4 times and each minion that it gave was a 5/5 instead of a 4/4. And back then players were like, oh, it's not that good, it's a hard deck to play. It couldn't have been that difficult to play, and it must have been the most powerful deck to almost ever exist, given that the fact the card's been nerfed twice and it's still tier 1. No card in existence has ever been nerfed and is still tier 1, and especially twice. So holy shit. So this deck has been popping in and out. If there's a lot of control on ladder, this deck runs over control. It absolutely annihilates control decks because they can't do anything against a field full of 4/4s, and especially infinite 4/4s once you have Zola and Valeera up, because Valeera copies a card in your hand and then Zola copies a copy of whatever she targets. So you just keep Zolaing herself and eventually you have infinite 4/4s. You'll never run out. So it's an infinite value 4/4 deck, and there's no deck in the game that can deal with an infinite amount of 4/4s every turn. There's not a deck that can do it. So you either kill this deck before that happens or you lose, which sucks because it's like playing rock paper scissors on ladder, because if I decide to queue in with Control Warrior and I queue into the Quest Rogue, I automatically lose. There's no way I win that matchup. It's just rock paper scissors, which sucks. Next deck we're going to look at is going to be the Odd Rogue. This deck, again, hasn't really changed at all. If you notice, Giggling Inventor is in almost every single one of these decks. So again, this whole card and this Odd Rogue, before Giggling Inventor, there was Scalebane. So I'm sure Scalebane might see play against a 5-mana 5/5. You know, at the end of your turn, give a minion on your side +5 or +3 attack, and it stays there. It's a solid card, and it definitely needs to be dealt with. If not, it literally wins games by itself. So I wouldn't be surprised if Scalebane, pops back into the Odd Rogue. It's a really solid card. And then, of course, with Giggling Inventor leaving, Blood Knight's leaving. So then we just might see more people playing Void Rippers in their deck. Again, instead of just 1 Void Ripper, they would now play 2 Void Rippers again. So I really just don't think the Giggling Inventor is going to change too much. Plus, maybe we'll see less Mossy Horrors as well, because now that there's no Giggling Horror, or there's no Giggling Inventor, Mossy Horror is not as good, but it's still good against Spreading Plague. So, and it's still good against a bunch of other cards. So we'll see, but I really don't see that big of a deal. I don't think the change is going to be huge. We're looking at the Tempo Mage. This is a deck that's actually been popping up more and more recently. It's just one of those decks that, this is one of those decks that the Quest Rogue is so scared to play against, because this just runs over Quest Rogue, absolutely annihilates Quest Rogue. So it's good that decks like this exist, because they punish the decks that are punishing the control decks. Like we know the Circle of Life. We have a control deck that's beating up everything. We need an aggro deck to be able to beat up that control deck, or an anti-control deck to beat up that control deck, and then the aggro deck to beat the anti-control deck. So one part of the puzzle can't get too powerful or it'll off balance everything. So decks like this need to exist for a reason. Right now it's really good because there's a lot of anti-control decks out there, and a lot of decks that just can't deal with the amount of damage that this puts out. Unfortunately, there's Druid, and Druid can gain a stupid amount of armor. So with all the Druid being out, in my opinion, I don't think Tempo Mate's the best way to go. But if you can find a pocket where you don't see a lot of Druids, or if you just don't even think that matchup's that bad, this is probably a really good deck for you to play. Granted, Mana Worm is getting the nerf soon, so it's going to cost 2 mana, but I really don't think that's going to change the deck too much. We got Even Warlock, deck that's been around for a really long time. What makes this deck so powerful is the fact that your hero power only costs 1 mana, so paying 1 mana to draw a card for 2 health is not bad at all. And then from there, you just play Mountain Giants and Twilight Drakes on turn 3 or 4. You have a substantial amount of heal in the deck with Spell Stones and the Plated Beetle, along with the Blood Reaver Gul'dan and Shroom Brewers. You have a solid amount of taunt minions because of Sunfury Protector, and then you have a decent middle game with Dread Infernals, you know, Mossy Horror again, Stalking Geist, and then the Bone Mare is actually a recent inclusion into this deck, but it's not really that big of a deal. It's just one of those cards that basically makes one of your lesser cards a threat that needs to be dealt with. So giving a minion +4/+4 is like, that doesn't sound that great, but it's actually like it just makes 2 threats on the board. So Bone Mare needs to be dealt with because it's a 5/5, pretty solid. And then whatever it gives the 4/4 is going to be, you know, at least a 4/4 plus. So we're talking 6/6, 7/7, a 5/8, whatever. So just a really solid card. It's good to see Bone Mare be back. When he cost 7 mana, he was absolutely ridiculous. But 8 mana, he's fair. Looking at Zoo Warlock, I'm sure you guys have seen this deck more often than not. And again, another deck that runs Prince. And if you enjoy, you know, if you're good at drawing Prince, good job. You're a better player than I am. This deck, Zoo has been around for a really long time. Sometimes it's really good. Sometimes it's really bad. At this point in time, Zoo is really, really good. It punishes a lot of the slower decks. And it's just super solid. The heal package is what makes this deck kind of so bursty in the early stages of the game. So as we know, Zoo Warlock takes a lot of damage because it taps a lot to be able to draw into like a never-ending, you know, stream of minions. And you've got cards like Voodoo Doctor, Life Drinker, and the Fungal Enchanter to be able to basically heal you. And if Happy Goals in your hand, if your heal was healed this turn, it gains, you know, loses the fact that it costs 3 mana, so you play a 0 mana 3/3. And then you've got the Light Warden that says whenever a character is healed, gain +2 attack. So really bursty this deck is. Plus it has all the ingredients of a normal Zoo. So it has Fungal Mancer, Doomguard, Sculpt Dreadlord, Serenite Chain Gang. You know what I mean? It has all those things of Flame Imp. So it has all the necessities of a normal Zoo, but it also has the burst potential with Prince, and of course the heal package. So really, really good. Zoo's very, very, very powerful. Looking at a deck that I've seen way too much this season, and that's going to be the Shudderwook Shaman, or the Shuddercuck Shaman. I played like, I don't know what it was with the other day or two ago, but we played like, I want to say every third game was against a Shudder Shaman. It might be because it, you know, it was towards the start of the season. We were like rank 4 or 3, but there was too many of these fucking guys out there. I'm not even going to cover this deck. If you play this deck, you're a degenerate loser, so no offense. If you're in a tournament and you're trying to win cash money, sure, play the deck because it's really good. But if you're literally rank 5 and you're just sitting there smashing Shudderwook Shaman game after Shudderwook Shaman game because that's how you find pleasure, oh my god, I feel bad for you. We have the Odd Warrior deck here. This is a deck that also popped up a lot recently. I don't know what streamer had played this deck that performed very well with it, but someone must have performed well with Odd Warrior in order to see a ton of Odd Warrior. This is my particular take on the most current control build of it. I actually played quite a few games with it the other day, and I posted that video. So if you're interested in watching some Control Warrior gameplay, should be under the Road to Legend and the most recent videos tab. It's a really fun deck. I've always loved Control Warrior. The problem with this deck is, again, you're rock, paper, scissoring against anti-control decks like the Togg Druid, like the Shudder Shaman, like the Quest Rogue. So if you're playing against any of those decks with this deck, you're just going to lose. You have like a 10% chance to win, and it's not, maybe that's being generous. I just don't see how this deck beats those decks because this deck has no aggression. I guess technically they can mill one of their combo pieces. So if like the Rogue overdraws his quest or the Shudder Shaman mills Shudder, you know, those are things that can happen, and you know, you get to victory, which I'm pretty sure is the only way I've ever won against Shudder is by milling them. You know, they play Alkalite of Pain or they play Mana Tide Totem. I don't kill it, and they just end up overdrawing like Grumble or Shudder, and then they concede. But besides that, you know, that's not the best win condition to have. But Odd Warrior does really, really well against Odd Rogue. It does really well against Zoo, Odd Paladin. Any sort of aggressive / mid-range deck, this deck just runs over them, like annihilates. Also, does pretty well against, you know, Even Lock, Control Lock, you know, Tempo Mage, any deck like that. This deck does really well against because it just has a lot of removal, has a lot of decent sized threats that put more cards in your deck, so you're going to win in Fatigue. And then the Super Collider is amazing, along with the Tank Up. Gotta love that Tank Up. The last deck we're going to cover is going to be the Odd Paladin. Again, Paladin's really not that popular right now. Whenever I do see a Paladin, it is Odd Paladin, but I don't see a lot of Paladin. So I figured I might as well put the Odd Paladin here, because if you're going to play one, it's probably going to be this particular, you know, Odd Paladin build. But again, not that popular. What makes this deck so powerful is the hero power and having Baku in the deck. You know, paying 2 mana to summon 2 1/1s is absolutely insane. And those 1/1s, you know, like this deck revolves around buffing your little minions with cards like Fungal Mancer, Unidentified Maul, Raid Leader, Stormwind Champion, Level Up. So there's just so many cards in this deck that synergize well with each other at buffing those small minions to make them, you know, a little bit chunkier and do a little bit more damage. And then also with everything in this deck being relatively cheap in regards to mana cost, besides like the bottom end here, you have cards like Divine Favor to draw back into your deck. So you throw up on the board, very similar to Zoo. Zoo has a hero power that they use. You have Divine Favor that you use. But besides that, very, in my opinion, or I think this deck's really, really strong at the moment as well. And it punishes the slower decks like Tempo Mage, not Tempo Mage, but the Quest Rogue and things of that nature. So with that, that's going to cover the most popular decks. Again, when November hits, Giggling Inventor, you know, Mossy Horrors and Blood Knights may change out, but that's a very small package in regards to an entire, you know, meta of decks. And I don't think that particular package is what's making this meta. I think this meta has been made by Deathrattle Hunter, you know, Togg, so that's Malygos, Druid, the amount of armor gain they get, and Prince. I think those are some of the, like, Incarnivorous Cube. Those are just some of the problem cards, and I've been over that in our balance update video, so if you're interested in hearing my thoughts, watch that. But yep, these are the most popular decks. These are the best decks to hit legend with. Hopefully you've enjoyed. If you have anything to add, feel free to add that to the comment section below. I'll see you in the next video or on stream, of course. I'm Rob or Warshak, and happy whatever the hell day it is.